All right, welcome. Hey, good afternoon. My name is Karl Ristow. I am a fire service veteran with over 44 years and still working on helping agencies. I don't deal directly in the fire service anymore. Retired as fire chief in 2013 on Kiowa Island, South Carolina, but essentially outside the Charleston area. So I have a wealth of experience that I'm going to put together to talk about our emergency service issues within Transylvania County. And it's not, I'm going to take away the problem of issue. I'm going to put in the proper term, I guess, would be, I'm going to put a face on what reality is. So I want to walk through some of that, and this chimes in with what we're doing with the emergency preparedness and recovery task force, as we've been doing some work on this based on this kind of information. So the task force was put together back in November, if I remember correctly, and it was designed to go ahead and do a bunch of things that the board wanted done in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. So first of all, the cast of characters, just to kind of put that out there, these are the individuals that are all currently on the task force that have been helping out in looking at whether it's emergency power, whether it's recovery, whether it's preparation or prevention for the community of Constantine Falls. And they've been working pretty hard. Our charge from the board has been to identify individual or preparedness materials, develop emergency operations plan, develop a continuity of operations plan, develop a crisis communication plan, and develop a community risk reduction approach to Constantine Falls. So the idea is to go ahead and try to do more prevention activities rather than do a grouping of, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't we do that on this date, and hopefully you remember it on this date. So we want to put together some materials, and some of it we've already done. As far as identifying materials, preparedness materials, I consider us 100% complete in that area, and there's a website specifically designed, or redesigned, I should say, to allow and give people information on how to go ahead and prevent or be ready for these events. And so if you click on the QR code that's in your picture, you'll be able to go directly to that site. You'll have to sign in, of course, but nonetheless, it's there. As far as the other board charges, the emergency operations plan I would consider is probably somewhere in the 20th percent complete. Mainly that is a lot of writing, is the writing working? Is staff and the employees happy with the changes that are also being dictated to them? And it's running through that to make sure everything works right, because if anybody disagrees, there's not going to be any plan that's going to be executed during an emergency. The continuity operations plan is also about 20%, and a lot of that is because it's going to take some board action. So continuity of operations, as an explanation, is nothing more than that during disaster, that management is still able to do the things they're able to do. So are they able to still spend money? Are they still be able to pay employees? Are they still able to operate and bring in supplies and do the things they need to do every day, because that world still goes on, right? Communications plan. What communication cycle are we going to get into? In other words, when do we start giving information out? When should the timeliness of all that information and have that kind of prescribed? It's still autonomous to what management wants to do, but it kind of gives some guidance to be able to be successful for the community. And last, we want to get into a community risk reduction approach. And in that, how do we, besides telling the employees, how do we tell homeowners what to do, how do we encourage them to want to do it? Because that would be easier than us dictating, right? So what is community risk reduction? So I'm going to use that as an example, as I have in many places. I'm going to pick on myself, all right? So this is risk, okay? And essentially, I know it's risk. You know it's here. You may have some of this, right? But at the end of the day is, I know the bad things that are going to happen. I know that the doc and what the research has to say, but I get to decide. And I know from Psych 101 back in college is that it'll take a significant emotional event to go ahead and change culture. This is culture. I'm allowed to live with this. My wife tells me about it. I ignore it. Therefore, until I have that heart attack or until the doctor or a significant event that changes my mind, I'm going to live with this until then. So that's risk. You have risk within your community, right? So a couple of things, and this comes from a company or a group of 501c3 called Vision 2020. And their job over the last close to 20 years, 25 years, has been to recognize and get fire departments and emergency service systems on how to understand what risk is and how do we reduce it. And we reduce it one of 5 ways. That's why the 5 E's are on the screen, right? One of them is education. That's what we're doing today. One of the many things we're doing today. One of them is engineering. How do we change codes? So we just had a wildland urban interface fire, and it threatened Coniston. How could we prepare ourselves? Well, some people think that means cutting down trees and raking back all the leaves down to dirt is the only problem. That's not the only thing, right? There's a wildland urban face building code. Could that be implemented? A lot of West Coast fire departments have started to implement, their cities have started to implement that to help them build their fire department or build their communities, excuse me, to meet the building code of a wildland urban face area. Is that something that we could do here with county council? That's questionable. Those things are always problematic, right? As far as engineered response, so how could we engineer, let's talk emergency response. How does emergency response play a role, right? So emergency response is, what does the fire department able to do? What can they do? What are they going to do? What is the emergency services system going to do? What are the police departments going to do? What's emergency management going to do, right? So what's their responsibility? They're going to do their job, but how could they do it better is a possibility, right? So there's that. Economic incentive might be another one of those risk reduction activities. How do we incentivize you as a homeowner to put in sprinkler systems into your homes? So knowing the sprinkler systems cost somewhere, new house about $1.70 square foot, and for new homes probably $2 to $3 a square foot, depending on your house. How do we incentivize to get you to do that? Because we know that there's never been a death in a community that's had an operational sprinkler system. Okay, so there's opportunity there. So as you look at the 5 E's, what are things that we could do? Those are things that we're going to look at a little bit and offer recommendation to the board, maybe even council at some point in time, but right now it's the board, and hopefully we can make that happen. So where do we live? So this is an interesting conversation because I want to bring to home that we don't live in Broward County, Florida. We don't live in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. We don't live in Richland County, South Carolina, where it's plentiful and there's plenty of emergency service support, right? We live in a county of about 34,000, in case you didn't know. And of that, that's about 87 people per square mile. And if you go into the national census, if you look into their definitions, you're going to find that that we're truly a rural community, all right? Rural. So what does that mean? Well, that means that we have about 378 square miles. We know that, we also know from looking at the census data that most of our people are 65 and older, 32.2%. That's a lot of emergency need when you come to responding, whether it's fire and EMS-based systems. And there's about 19,000, a little over 19,000 houses. That means or what's classified as a house. And I use that because that means there's a lot of need that the fire department responds to that might distract them from your emergency. So there's loads of information here from looking at population densities of communities to understand the problem. And that's one of the things I wanted you to know, primarily that we do not live in a heavily populated urban environment anymore. Even me moving outside, lived outside of Western DC for a number of years, 10 and a half years. And DC to here is milestones different than you could ever imagine. So let's look at the why. So let's look at emergency response particularly. Let's look at just the medical response that you get today. All right. First, let's look at the why. The why being, what is the time to death? Time to death is 4 to 6 minutes. That's no heartbeat, no breathing. You got 4 to 6 minutes to live or you're done. Something has to happen. Whether it's intervention activities, whatever the case, you come back to life. But 4 to 6 minutes is all you have. If we look at, and I took these numbers merely by some of the 45 years of time that I have in the fire service, and I'm being very gracious, but call processing time is one stamp that can be measured, and I estimated it to be about 2 minutes. Now, it's probably longer than that, but essentially, I'll put it at 2 minutes. Turnout time, I put at 2 minutes. It should be about 90 seconds by standard, but I'll give some extra time because of that. Travel time. Travel time right now from the EMS station that would service this building right now is 21 minutes away according to Google, okay? If you add all that up, you're looking at 25 minutes before an ambulance would be here to provide advanced life support to anybody here. Now, will there be a first responder first? Yes, there will be. But do they have the advanced medications to deal with a cardiac stroke or other serious event? No. However, on risk size, the good thing is about 1 to 2% of the call volume of all the EMS calls that probably go on in this county, and I don't know what those statistics are, but I would guess is that 1 to 2% are high acuity calls or those serious calls. The rest are all basic life support type calls. So on the good side, there's not many calls like that. On the bad side, we're exceeding all of the timelines if we use the national standard, which is right now set at 8 minutes and 59 seconds. So serious difference, and why we should be prepared. To kind of compare that is, here's a data chart that I've used or that I have from what I would consider a career combination fire department within the United States. And if you note down at their total response time, you'll note that for urban response, you can see that their numbers are pretty much right in line with what the standard reveals. However, if you look at their rural response, they're pretty much close to what we would see in a rural response. So we're not that far off, and this is a good career or combination fire department within the United States. And most importantly about this data, this particular data has been verified and validated by a team. So a team has gone in to literally recognize and verify and validate that it's accurate. All right, unlike the information I just shown. Let's look at EMS, the why, or fire, the why. Time to flashover. So time to flashover in this room, for instance, if a fire started in this room right now, this moment, you'd have 3 to 4 minutes to get out before it was completely capable of an entire flash that would kill us. And the reason it's changed so much, or the reason it's down to 3 to 4 minutes, is because of the building material that we use. The chairs, the seats, the hermetically sealed windows, the way our building construction goes. All right, 3 to 4 minutes. What was it 45 years ago when I came into fire service in 1980? 17 to 18 minutes. So 17 to 18 minutes, when I first came in, you could survive a room and contents. Today it's 3 to 4. All right, significant difference. Not that that's a bad thing. It requires risk reduction. What are we going to do? So looking at my numbers, again, I use the same call processing numbers of 2 minutes, and that's a good guess. Turnout time being 2 minutes, that's a good guess. Travel time, the fire department, our local fire department, Conisty at the closest station right now, 5 minutes travel time according to Google. And because they're a rural department, the standard, NFPA 1720, which is the standard for volunteer fire departments, they should be required or be able to provide an attack line within 2 minutes. If I add all that up, 11 minutes. 11 minutes total before they'll get here from the time that you call 911. From the time that you call 911, not the time that they get the call, but the time that you get 911. If you look at the standard, again, the standard leaves it very open. NFPA 1720, National Fire Protection Association Standard 1720, allows for all volunteer fire departments to set their timeline, but they have to set it and then measure themselves against it. All right, so there's the why. If I go look at the same fire department and I look at their fire responses, you'll notice that we're very close to those numbers. And again, 6 minutes and 47 seconds for a rural first unit on scene, 11 minutes 47 seconds for a first unit on scene, which is what we would get from Conisty should they respond. All right, so we are very comparable, very, very comparable, and their numbers haven't been verified. In other words, their being Conisty or Transylvania County has not been verified and validated. So what do we want you to do? So ideally, we want you to be prepared 3 to 5 days. The standard, or I should say the federal government, has told us that for a number of years. The state governments has told us for a number of years, and I'm going to tell you, because I believe in it, is we should be ready for 3 to 5 days. 3 to 5 days, we should be ready to be on our own, not expect any help from Conisty Falls Property Owner Association, not to have any help from the fire department, not to have any help from Transylvania County EMS or Transylvania County Emergency Management. We should be able to be on our own. If you cannot, we're not prepared. That's the way I would look at it. And I had this same challenge dealing with my fire department in a very similar community as Conisty Falls. So I lived outside of Charleston, South Carolina for a number of years and was fire chief to the St. John's Fire District. And we had the islands of Kiowa, Seabrook, Johns, and Wadmalaw Island. Kiowa and Seabrook being two resort, highly affluent communities, very similar to Conisty. And we would go around during hurricane prep. We would go around even during when hurricanes actually threatened. And essentially we would tell them when it was time to leave because the governor ordered evacuations. And that was all great. Most of them left, but there was always some hardcore people. And they were always in the 70 to 80-year-old range. They were going to ride it out. We can live this out. They're right on the ocean, for God's sake. And so we'd wait, and just before power got turned off to the houses from the power company, we would go out and take one more ride through the island. And anybody had a light on, we'd stop. And there's probably about 3 to 5 that stayed, maybe a little bit more. And we'd always ask them, we'd knock on the door and we'd politely ask them for their next of kin information. And they would ask why. What do you need that for? I said, because we need something to put on your toe tag. Essentially, who to contact. Because we're going to find you. You're not going to be in great shape. And I got to know who to get a hold of. And that usually motivated most of them to leave. In fact, I think all of them did at that point on that particular island. So it was a worthwhile event, but again, they're not ready for those kind of. I run the same problem today with my parents. They live in Naples, Florida. We get a hurricane. They fight me on it. I go down there, I drag them out, and they're a lot happier. So it's very similar. People just don't want to leave their homes. I get that. It costs a lot of money for you to leave your house. It costs money if you don't have a place to stay, I should say. If you have a place to stay, there should be no question. But if you out of your house and you have to go spend weeks in a hotel, that is a cost, and that's understandable. Some things to help you. Ready.gov is there and has numerous checklists that have been created by the government and other agencies to help you prepare and be ready. All you have to do is go there. The QR code here on the screen will allow you to go ahead and do that. I would say use it for everything. Everything is in there that you could possibly deal with in Conisty Falls. There are checklists, there are recommendations, there are things to do. Go through it, find out what works for you, pull the things off that relate to the risks in this community. If you don't know what the risks of this community are, TransylvaniaCounty.gov, the emergency management area or section of the website will take you to their comprehensive plan, to their plan, emergency management plan. And in the plan, they do list all the risks that they think will happen in the community. And you can build a checklist off of that. So after the events, to kind of let you know what the priorities are, right? After every event, it doesn't matter if it's Conisty Falls, if it's Transylvania County, if it's Charleston County, South Carolina, or where it is, these are the typical priorities that will go on after a hurricane, after a disaster, or any kind of event. First of all, roads. Roads have to be cleared. All primary roads have to be cleared first. All right? If they're clear, there's no problem. If there's an emergency that doesn't bother a road, hey, we're good. Why do the roads have to be cleared? Well, because that's how we're bringing in all the resources to help you. Is it helping people? Yes. Is it directly helping you? No. In other words, don't expect me to roll up next to your house and clear your road What you should do is expect, though, that I'm cleaning up 276 and maybe a couple of arteries that come into Conisty, so we can bring in pallets of water, so we can bring in pallets of food, we can bring in other resources to help you. All right, that's the primary. Secondary roads are just that, they're secondary. So in other words, once we get the primary roads, Conisty Trail done, then we can start working on other roads. And therefore, that'll be one at a time as they go through, and it's going to take a lot of time because we have a lot of roads. And therefore, that way, we'll find out if you're blocked, if you're dealing with Hurricane Helene cleanup, we're going to find out what trees are blocking, and it's going to take days, all right? We're not talking hours, we're talking about days. Damage assessment. While we do roads, we're also going to be doing, or they're going to be looking at damage, reporting damage up the chain. All of our information, all of our damage information, all of our road clearing information, all of it's going to go to the fire department. The fire department then communicates with the county communicates with the state communicates with the federal government as it stands today. All right. So damage assessment is going to be going on as well, so we know what buildings are damaged, not to repair anybody's house, not to repair our own facilities. If it's the activity wellness center, whether it's the clubhouse, it's not designed to go ahead and start working on it. It's designed to identify so it can be communicated. We're going to request resources and restore operations. We have to get the operations of Conisty Falls back into sync, back into operation before we can move on. Now, what does that mean? I mean, does that mean that you're still going to be left out there as a homeowner? No, but yes. No, but yes. Yes, it's going to take some time. You are being left out. No, because all of this is working towards you to help you. And we're hoping that it does. So those are kind of, to understand the priorities after an event, after any type of emergency, one needs to understand, know what they're going to do, what their priorities are, and it's not you directly. It's not to come to your house and help you. And if we can help the system by not needing you, by not needing the emergency service system, we're allowing them to go to somebody else that's more critical. So that's what we want to do at the end of the day. A couple of quotes that I'll leave you with. First of all, a friend of mine, a guy named Gordon Graham, he's an attorney, and he speaks a lot in the fire service world and other worlds, and he helps with a company called Lexipol. Essentially what they do is they do policy development for a lot of municipalities and fire departments, law enforcement, EMS, so that way it reduces their risks within their community by following policy, all right? And his normal moniker and the way he starts out a lot of his conversations or ends them is what's predictable is preventable, all right? If you can predict that it's coming, you can prevent it. If you can predict it, you can prevent yourself from being a problem. If you can predict it, you can prevent yourself from having a negative effect from the problem, okay? So what's predictable or preventable? The next one is from a guy that I've learned to love. He has since passed many years ago, a guy named Ed Deming. Edward Deming is the father of quality improvement, total quality management. And I learned Deming back in my Air Force days because the military was going towards a total quality management ideology. And I was leading teams on how to improve the fire service. And essentially Deming, just a small history on Deming. Deming was actually bastardized in the United States right after World War II. So he went to Japan and he literally helped Japan lift out of the ashes. Primarily, he made Toyota what it is today. His initial start is why Toyota was successful and most of the other Asian markets for automobiles. Once he did that, then the United States thought he was smart again. And he came back and he helped build Chrysler to what it is today. So he has been very instrumental in making a difference because of total quality management ideology. And the quote that I like best from him is, it's not necessary to change. You don't have to change at all. I don't have to change my risk here. My survival is not mandatory. Your survival is not mandatory. So you don't have to change. It's okay. But understand that you do not have to survive either. And I think everybody wants to. So those are kind of a couple of quotes that I'll leave with you on that. If there are questions after this presentation, or should you have them, I know that there's going to be put on a website, they're going to develop an email address so that people can write in, ask questions. We'll get them disseminated to the best we can to get the answer we can, knowing that that's not my everyday job or some person that's assigned to it, but just keeping in mind is that it might lead to answering questions over a presentation in the future, and or maybe there's an immediate question that we can answer, but nonetheless is be a part of the solution, not part of the problem at the end of the day.